All right, title this Imperialism / Spanish-American War Part 3. Where we left off, we were discussing the beginning of the Spanish-American War. We discussed how it all occurred. I believe the last thing we talked about was Commander Dewey following TR's secret orders, smashing the Spanish fleet in Manila Bay. Even though he was only supposed to make sure that they didn't leave, he decided to take actions in his own hands and basically smash the whole Spanish fleet in that Manila Bay. So kind of a surprise attack, not necessarily following orders, but now he's a hero. Dewey becomes a hero in America because of the newspapers and things like that we've talked about, yellow journalism. And they name things after him, babies, yachts, you name it. He was that kind of a hero in America. So couldn't exactly do anything to him now. So we were at war with Spain. So now we have to prepare for war. Okay. Excuse me. The war preparations that America made, we weren't ready for this. Many of our soldiers that are going to participate in the Spanish-American War were actually Civil War veterans as well. There was a lot of confusion in the organization of the American troops, and the country in the meantime is pushing this, especially driven by the yellow journalism in the newspapers. The country demanded an expedition to Cuba, and the War Department honestly hasn't organized an army in 33 years, so well behind of probably where we should have been. The 5th Army Corps was created in June of 1898, made up of about 17,000 men, 32 transports. There was a cavalry unit with back then it meant riding on horses. The men were led by General William Shafter, Shafter. He was a 300-pound man, big old boy. Needed a little help to get on his horse. These 17,000 men assembled in Florida to get ready for an excursion to Cuba. They were not well equipped. They were in heavy wool winter uniforms in June in Florida. You can imagine what that was like. The men boarded a 32 transport, those 32 transport ships, and moved out to Cuba. It's going to be a disaster. Took them 5 days to land against no opposition. Just was not organized very well. So the beginnings of our imperialistic ways in Cuba are going to start slow. Now, the bright spot of all this is called the Rough Riders. Teddy Roosevelt had resigned as Assistant Secretary of the Navy because Teddy Roosevelt wanted to participate in the Spanish-American War. He was actually offered command of the Rough Riders, but turned it down because he felt like he did not have any he didn't have any military experience, so he did not see himself suited very well to lead this group. He did accept a second-in-command position. Colonel Leonard Wood, who was TR's good friend, was given command. Okay, he was actually a doctor by trade, but distinguished himself in the Indian Wars. He helped, along with TR, recruit cowboys, miners, Native Americans, policemen, college athletes to this unit, including a champion half-miler, Harvard's quarterback at the time. Back then, Harvard had a really good football team, and 2 of the nation's top tennis players. So they were assembled out of, and that's what TR wanted. He wanted rough and tough, athletic people. They were delayed for a week, but finally left for Cuba. The delay was they didn't have a transport. We talked about the organization, how it was lacking in the landing. They didn't have a transport. Teddy took care of that. Okay, Teddy Roosevelt, will actually hijack a large transport ship intended for other regiments. Now, oddly enough, the most famous cavalry unit in U.S. history will actually fight without their horses. There wasn't room for their horses on the transport. So, lack of space caused them to leave most of the horses behind. Only the officers were allowed to bring their horses and some pack mules for equipment. They were giving a very bad landing location. And the soldiers weren't given directions on how to get the horses ashore that were along. So many of the horses were just pushed overboard to swim home or swim to the landing. And in all the action, a lot of the horses swam in the wrong direction. They didn't know which way to go. So many of the horses would actually swim out to sea, including one of TR's horses, his favorite horse, Rain in the Face. Some horses were saved by some of the buglers on the beach. Unfortunately, like I said, a lot of them would actually go the wrong way. Shark bait. The men rowed ashore in small boats. They were met by about 150,000 Spaniards. The Spaniards at this point were really tired of fighting this. There wasn't a lot of morale on the Spanish side. They've been fighting a guerrilla war for years. Very, very disenchanted with the way things were going. So we're going to see some quick action here. Now, there were two hills that defended the approach to the San Juan. Okay? It was San Juan Hill and Kettle Hill. 8,000 men were pinned down in front of San Juan Hill. And that's where TR wanted to go. He believed that's where all the action was. But however, TR and the Rough Riders were ordered to attack Kettle Hill. He was kind of disappointed by this, but obviously he's going to follow orders. So he was now given command of the Rough Riders because Colonel Wood moved up to command another division. So TR is in charge. They approached San Juan Ridge, where the two hills were located, and found members of the 9th Cavalry Unit lying in the grass. Roosevelt said to them, why aren't you advancing? And a captain said, we have no orders. Roosevelt answered, where's your colonel? Captain shrugged, I don't know. Roosevelt then said, well, I'm a ranking officer, and now I'm in charge, and you are ordered to charge. So the Rough Riders then began to push up through Kettle Hill in a wild, free-swinging rush. 3 other regiments, including the all-black 10th Regiment, the Buffalo Soldiers, joined the rush. Teddy led it. Okay, this is a very accurate depiction. There's Teddy on his horse, which was almost suicide to lead a regiment on your horse back then. Guess where they're going to all aim? And Teddy always said, come on, not go on. Okay, meaning, come on, follow me. He was actually the first to reach the trenches and killed a man with a gun that somebody gave him that was made from the steel from the wreck of the USS Maine. Rough Riders took Kettle Hill and then wanted to get into the action. Okay, TR actually gave an order that nobody listened to, or nobody heard, I should say, to go attack San Juan Hill, because he wanted a part of that after they won in Kettle Hill. Nobody heard him, so he actually had to go back and go get his troops. By the time he got there, San Juan Hill had already been taken. But who do you think gets credit for taking San Juan Hill? The newspapers go crazy with it. Teddy Roosevelt and the Rough Riders get credit for taking San Juan Hill, but in actuality they did not. They became famous for something they had a small part in. Their actual assault, no brave, their actual assault was on Kettle Hill. Okay, very similar to Breed's Hill and Bunker Hill in Boston. The monument's actually on the wrong hill. In August, the war comes to an end. Very quick. Commodore George Dewey takes Manila when he destroyed the Spanish fleet at Manila Bay. After the Americans took Cuba, they invaded Puerto Rico and took control of most of that island. Like I said, the Spanish were very tired of this whole thing, so not a lot of hard fighting goes on. The U.S. gets Puerto Rico and the Philippines. Spain saw the hopelessness in fighting and actually sued for peace. They went to basically the World Court. In the Treaty of Paris in 1898, oops, a little too far there. In the Treaty of Paris in 1898, three things came out of this. Okay, number one, independence for Cuba. Cuba gets their independence. Number two, the United States would win Puerto Rico, Guam, G-U-A-M, and the Philippines. Okay, we will actually pay the Spanish $20 million for the Philippines. That's the deal. So we have now become an imperialistic country. We have taken Puerto Rico and Guam and the Philippines from Spain. We have let Cuba become independent, although we are really have a very close relationship to them. So now we get into our own problems here with the Philippines. The Filipinos want their independence. So, knowing that we just fought for Cuba's independence, we're basically just going to give them their independence, right? That makes sense. Correct? No. Okay, we are going to make sure they don't get their independence. Unlike Cuba, the Philippine Islands were annexed and ruled directly by the U.S. An uprising was led by a man named Emilio, I'm going to butcher this, Aguinaldo, A-G-U-I-N-A-L-D-O. It'll take us 3 years to suppress this rebellion. We actually lose more Americans in this rebellion than we did with Spain. Okay, in the Spanish-American War alone, 460 Americans died from the battle deaths. Okay, and some you'll see even lower numbers. Okay, one resource will even say 345. So around 400, no more than 500 men are killed in battle. We lose more to disease in Cuba than we do in the deaths. 5,200 will die of disease. Okay. In the Filipino War, we'll lose over 4,300 men in that battle. So things are pretty rough in the Philippines. And once again, it's kind of ironic because we're fighting for those things. We're fighting for independence for Cuba, but then we won't give the Philippines their independence. Now, eventually they will gain their independence. We will try to clean things up, and we'll talk about that in the upcoming lectures. We will try to clean things up in the Philippines, and while we are working to let them rule themselves, and eventually they will become an independent country with our approval. But that's down the road a little bit. Okay, that is it for today's lecture. And stay classy, Vandalia.